Morning, everyone. This is Lisa Hampson. I'm the Director of Prevention and Intervention Portfolio for the Youth Services Division. And I want to thank you for joining us today for our mentoring program RFP review. I just want to let you know that state that this webinar is going to be broadcast. It's going to be taped, and it is going to be posted and recorded on the DFSS YouTube channel and DFSS website. Also, please note that all of you are on mute on this call. If you have questions, please type them into the dashboard and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. So once again, thank you. I'm here with my colleagues, Monica, which many of you know already, as well as Julia, who will answer questions in regards to iSupplier and e-procurement. Let's get started. So once again, we are going to review the RFP with you, provide you with opportunities to ask questions, and once again, all of those questions will be posted online. Previously, we've had two bidders conference last week. All of the questions from those two events, as well as the webinar, will be posted. So just a quick review, the Chicago Department of Family Supports and Services. Here's all of the divisions that servicing the city. We serve over $327 million. It's actually streeted every year in services through an RFP process. So many of you who are on the line are delegate agencies. Many of you are new, but we really are the largest social service provider in the city, working from individuals from birth all the way to senior services. For youth services, we really want to next slide, please. For youth services, we really focus on working with partners in the community in order to deliver, collaborate, inform, and steward effectively programming that impacts Chicago residents. Next slide. One of the things that I just want to point out under the Youth Service Division priorities for many of you is we are a system that is functioning in 3 portfolios at this time. So that is something new. As part of that, this particular mentoring RFP is tied to the prevention and intervention portfolio. For many of you who previously are running and are currently operating mentoring programs, you might be more familiar with our out of school time and or summer employment. We now have 3 very distinct portfolios. So this particular mentoring program falls within our prevention and intervention portfolio. The division itself serves young adults, 6 to 24, really with a focus on improving skill building, relationship development, educational achievement, mentorship, and employment. And once again, for the prevention and intervention portfolio, our priority is really on young adults with the most complex needs. Next slide. So just a quick overview. For those of you, once again, who are currently operating a mentoring program, I'm going to start on the right side of your slide to talk about some of the changes initially that are in this RFP. One of the biggest changes is that we've expanded to really target 36 community areas. Currently, if you are operating a mentoring initiative or an MMI program, you are tied to the 22 communities. We are now expanding to 36. Our target population is also expanding to include young girls and women. We also have expanded to increase up to grade level 12. 2 things, one of them not being that new, but one of the things that we definitely want to focus on is the inclusion of performance outcomes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the criteria for screening. But really looking at outcomes versus outputs in this particular RFP. And then lastly, for many of you, it might be new, the learning cohort model, which are quarterly meetings where we review your data, look at where you are in regards to what the division goals are related to the mentoring program, and offer technical assistance and capacity building and supports for your programming. Once again, this RFP is to ensure that at-risk youth who live in communities that have experienced high rates of gun violence and homicide receive supports in order for them to remain in and graduate from high school and engage in pro-social behaviors. And so once again, we will get into exactly what those particular things look like. And then we also want to stress for individuals that the contract term will run January 1 of 2020 through January 2022. So this is just a nice graphic to break us up before we get into the meat of the RFP. Next slide, please. Mentoring programming. So we just want to spend a little time for those of you who are trying to get a good sense of what the division is looking for when we talk about mentoring programs, and particularly what that means to us. So for this particular RFP, once again, we are looking at young adults who are at risk, who are living and or coming from those targeted communities. We are looking for mentoring programs which provide high quality programming that's curriculum driven, trauma focused, or includes a conflict resolution lens. And for many of you, that is something that's probably a little bit new or unique, but we really are trying to make sure that we are focused on the best outcomes for young adults, and that often includes a curriculum driven model that has very consistent mentors and mentoring curriculums and structures around that. So at minimum, your program should have group cohort. It's a cohort approach, and groups should consist at minimum 12 to 15 young adults. Other things that we are looking for in regard to that is, once again, the 36 communities, and that's been identified on page 8 of the RFP. We also want to ensure that you are thinking about operating throughout the school year with the option of a 12-month programming. Once again, that is your choice, but definitely something that we are interested in and looking at from a minimum. These are the things that we're looking for. Happy if you're able to provide more programming, but this is for us what we are looking for from a minimum mentoring proposal. And really focusing on recruitment that will focus on academically off track, young adults that have low school attendance, have 1 or 2 school disciplinary infractions, limited police involvement, and or heightened exposure to violence. So once again, that's just a quick overview. We will now get into more specifics. Program requirements. So we are currently looking at if you're currently operating a mentoring program, or if you're in one or more of the targeted community areas, we really are interested in ensuring, one, we're looking at people's program capacity, people's ability that they've had experience actually implementing a program, or have the structures in place and the ability to serve as many target communities as possible. The biggest issue, which is highlighted, our bullet number 2 there, is physical capacity. We want to ensure that programming is the best for youth, but we also want to make sure that it's not a burden operationally on the organization. One of the requirements in order for us to be able to read and score and evaluate proposals is that at a minimum you must have an operating internal budget of $250,000. If you do not, we're not going to be able to read and score your proposal. The other program requirement is you have to be able to provide cohort mentoring services for youth. So once again, we are following a curriculum cohort approach to the work. Priority enrollment should be for youth who are at CPS, elementary or high school, that rate level 2 or 3 option-based school. And once again, working through a curriculum. And then lastly, utilizing the approved assessment tool. Once again, that can be a tool that you identify, that's identified through your curriculum, and or working with the department, we will identify what that assessment tool will look like. Once again, at a minimum, there should be 5 hours a month with a mentor. It should be a group or cohort component or approach to the work. It should focus on developmental skills and training, and it should address students' social and emotional needs. So once again, really looking at how that curriculum really works with not only focusing on the emotional needs, but also being able to think about skill building. And then incorporate positive values, principles, and practices. So we want to spend a little time talking about the agency, mentor, and mentee responsibilities and what that looks like. For the agencies, first and foremost, you have to be able to recruit based on the requirements previously outlined in the RFP. For example, we are really targeting young adults who are from the 36 communities. So respondents, you do not have to physically have an office or administrative office within those targeted communities. The real focus is that the young adults that you're serving are in and or live in those 36 communities. So I just want to stress that. From the agency, one of the major priorities is clearly to be able to train mentors in best practice, curriculum and youth development. So really thinking about what is the best match for an adult who's going to be a good mentor? What is our onboarding process? What does it look for us to train individuals as we bring them into this? And then also thinking about who you're onboarding, thinking about the fact that data really matters for us. Many of you know, the mayor's office, as well as our leadership internally here at DFSS, is really focused on performance outcomes and making sure that we have data in a timely fashion to report out on programming. So being able to enter data weekly, to be able to address any data needs, concerns, or training needs, and be able to communicate that very clearly with the staff here at DFSS. But we are in the process of really starting at this point weekly, if not monthly, points in time data pulls, and we really use that for the leadership to say what is going on with our programming, where are we, is our programming effective? So data is really going to be critical in your ability to utilize our data match system and also being able to input data and resolve data issues. Biggest part of the mentoring program is to be able to match youth and mentors, really thinking about what matters most, thinking about gender, thinking about interests, skills, where individuals live. So really wanting to think about what is your process and what does that look like. Also to provide ongoing assessment of quality and safety of mentors and mentee relationships. And lastly, to be able to participate in the DFSS-sponsored professional learning cohorts, which are part of the requirement of this mentoring RFP. For the mentors, we want you to be thinking about their availability to serve youth for at least 5 hours a month. They have to be a mandated reporter under Illinois law, and they must be at least 21 years of age. They can be 21 years of age. We do want to be clear on this call, as well as we've been in all of our pre-submittal conferences, that we also want to make sure that it's appropriate. So someone can be 21, but we want to make sure that they have the appropriate level, skills, maturity level to be a good match, to be a mentor, and be able to execute on the curriculum and the goals of the mentoring program. We also want to make sure, once again, on the next slide, we want to make sure that they can provide at least 5 hours a month. And your mentor can be volunteered or paid. In the past, most providers have had paid staff who are functioning in that mentor role, and that's fine. We don't have an issue with that. Once again, as long as they can meet the criteria in regards to being able to understand the curriculum and be able to execute on the requirements of that. They must be able to pass the Illinois State Police or federal background check and be able to be screened under the National Sex Registry. And I think the biggest thing is being able to implement the trauma and conflict resolution-based curriculum for the youth. So once again, thinking about age, thinking about match, thinking about skill set, and lastly, also that they need to be able to participate in the learning cohort. And lastly, for the mentees, which are the young adults themselves, we just want to make sure that they are between grade 6th and 12th grade from the targeted community, and that they're interested and actively engaged and want to get supports and services through the mentoring program. As I said, I've been in this role. For many of you know, I've been in this role not very long, but I've managed programs before in other settings. And I always say we don't want to be dragging our clients and our young people to programming. So retention is going to be something that we are going to be looking at. So we want to make sure that when you're thinking about your recruitment pool, that it's a very large pool, that you can then make sure that you can ensure consistency in your cohort approach. Next slide. So let's spend a little time on the performance measures. So the chart that you're seeing now is the exact chart that's actually in the RFP. And we just want to talk a little bit about some of the key things that for some of you may be different if you're currently operating a program, but also want to highlight and elevate because we know that it will be a point in our leadership that they will be looking at. Clearly, as we talk about young adults who are high needs, who come from communities with high levels of homicide and violence, we're relying a lot on data from Chicago Public Schools as well as Chicago Police Department and our partnership through the University of Chicago U-Labs and Crime Lab in order to gather information. So as you're thinking about your recruitment, you clearly will need to be thinking about who within the school I need to talk with in order to make sure that we have the right individual. This is going to come out in your performance measures. So on the top and first performance outcome we're looking at is 75% of youth will be on track to graduate and or participate in post and secondary education. That may require you, one, having a relationship and an MOU agreement with schools, being able to engage and talk with social workers, teachers, other individuals in the school to figure out who is on track, who's not on track, who might be a good fit for this program. And one of the indicators that, once again, we're looking at is that youth will be academically at grade level to graduate or promotion to the next grade level. So once again, clearly, if you're running a younger program, we cannot predict graduation. We're not asking you to do that, but we want to make sure that you can show or that there's an indicator in regards to that, their ability to be promoted to the next level. How is mentoring impacting that? And we're going to be doing this through a self-report, either through a survey or assessment tool. And we've indicated the 3 points in time throughout the contract period where we will be asking you to gather that information and then submit that data. We also will be once again looking at information from Chicago Public Schools to look at who's on track, who is at grade level, and looking at promotions. Our second point is about the 85% of youth will have strengthened and improved their school connectedness. Once again, we want to show that mentoring program is impacting their pro-social and well-being. And part of that is how do they gauge and understand their relationship to school, to parents, to mentors as well. So the second 85%, as well as the next bullet, 90% of youth will report a positive relationship with their mentor. Once again, we're trying to ensure that they feel a stronger connection to teachers, to peers, to resources, to activities, and that they have a positive adult mentoring relationship that's impacting their life choices. And once again, both of those will be through a report, whether that's an assessment tool, and it will be captured at 3 points of time during the year. 60% of youth will report improvements with school attendance and truancy. Once again, really going to be relying on Chicago Public Schools and U-Labs to give us some of that data. But also, we also want you to be having information that you gather from mentors in regards to and what's happening at school. Are we seeing decreased absenteeism? Are we seeing a reduction in suspensions, expulsion? Behavioral issues have decreased and more engagement in school activities. All of those are going to be indicators to us that relationship and their thoughts about school and their ability to attend school, we should see an increase in that. And lastly, 75% of youth will not recidivate, and that's rearrest while enrollment program. Part of this data will come once again from the Chicago Police Department. Some of this will be self-report either through your school contacts or directly from the youth themselves. And so we really want to see that there is a decrease in delinquent behavior that can be self-report and by provided information from the Chicago Public Schools, from CPS, and from CPS staff. And we also want to be able to help them, we want to have an indicator that identifies choices with their peer circles. We want to see their ability to make positive choices. Hence, this goes back to the curriculum that you choose to use, as well as it making sure that there is a conflict resolution and a pro-social lens. Performance measures. We just want to spend a little time explaining what we mean by performance measures. Once again, this is the direction the department is moving towards. And as a youth services division, we are in all of our portfolios are moving to performance measures throughout this process. in all of our new RFPs, we'll have this information and we'll have this new language. So we want to make sure that you're familiar with it and what we mean by it. So performance measures for us, we really want to be thinking about outputs versus outcomes. And we really want to be focusing in on what do we mean when we talk about achieving goals and the success of programs. So outcomes, in the past, we primarily have asked you about outcomes. How many young adults are you serving? Is your cohort full? And those things matter. Clearly they matter. We want to know that our dollars are being utilized effectively throughout the city of Chicago. But we also want to know what is the impact for those 15 young adults who are potentially in that cohort. And that is the outcome. So the outcome measure is really about thinking about effectiveness, quality, performance, and assessing the success of the program. So really this is something we are spending a little time talking about here, because it is, as we move towards the slides around selection criteria, that is something we are asking you to put a little bit of time, thought, and energy into. So we just want to make sure that you are very clear, have a clear sense of what we mean when we talk about outputs versus outcome in the RFP. Great. So we are moving into the last part of the RFP review, and we really want to go over the selection criteria. There are 4 areas related to the selection criteria. I'm not going to read through all the bullets on here. Once again, this information is pulled directly from the RFP, which I strongly encourage you all to not skim, but to read very clearly, because it is different. We've had lots of questions about, is this an MMI expansion? It is not an expansion of MMI. It is a new mentoring program. So we want people to be very clear that the selection criteria is different. We really discourage you from cut and pasting from your old RFP into this one, because there are certain nuances that if you don't read to the RFP all the way through, you're going to miss some key points as we talk about selection criteria. So I want to highlight what some of those key points are. The biggest thing is we want to be clear that we are asking people to think about, we are putting priority towards the target population, the communities, and that we want to make sure that you are able to define services that are going to be provided, and that can be directly through partnerships, through linkage agreements, and then what are the level 2, 3, or option schools that you are going to engage with. So we are asking for that information as part of the process. We want to make sure that you have those relationships in place, because those relationships very much are going to impact the way that you recruit, how you recruit, if you have a recruitment base. And so we want to make sure that those relationships and some of those partnerships have been worked out. The other thing that we want to point out on this particular slide is that you have an effective approach to identifying and retaining program participants. This includes like rules and regulations that reduce barriers to participants and outreach efforts. Once again, looking at the current data, we really are sort of trying to up the ante with this mentorship program. And one of the things is not only just that people have people enrolled in the mentoring side, but the retention side. If you have 12, we want to hopefully see that 12 continue to make it when we look at 6 months down the road in this programming. So we really want to stress that that is something we will be looking at. And the last thing on this slide that I just want to point out is, once again, demonstrating a history of implementing a trauma or conflict resolution-based curriculum for your mentoring program that engages at-risk youth in a cohort. The reason why I'm stressing this is because many of you may be new, and we're not discouraging people from doing that, but the issue for us is being able to understand that you have a history and you have able to demonstrate that you can implement a trauma or conflict resolution-based curriculum. This is particularly clear because we are adding new populations, we are expanding to communities, we are really looking at particularly the individuals who have the ability to not only run these programs but service young girls and women. So being able to have a history of implementing programming, your ability from, once again, this impacts us as we move through the contracting process through the city, your ability, the administrative pieces that involved in having a city contract. And for those of you who don't know, your ability to implement this program as well as be able to manage that is going to be critical. Next one. Our second criteria is program performance, outcomes, and qualities. And one of the things, once again, is we want to be able that you can demonstrate evidence of a strong past performance against desired outcomes and goals, and other notable accomplishments in providing services to the target population. So one, we want to know, do you have the ability and do you have past performance that helps us feel confident enough that you can implement this program? This is also an opportunity for you to shine in regards to if you may not have previous experience in this, but being able to have a clear rationale about how you're going to execute this program, what does it look like, how am I going to meet the desired outcomes as well. So I often say this is a place for you to really think about what are your skills, to brag about yourself, to brag about your organization, and why that is in alignment in regards to your ability to perform and have quality outcomes as part of this RFP. The other thing that I just want to point out is experience using data to inform, improve services and practice. We don't just collect data to collect data. We collect data and we review that data with you through the learning cohorts because we hope it's informative and that you're using this to be able to figure out how do we continue to improve on our mentoring program throughout the life of our contract. And also, it informs us as to are there things we as a department need to be thinking about as it relates to different RFPs and programming that we put out. Hence, why we've added women to the programming this time is because historically this mentoring program has only served boys. So we want to make sure that you are using and that you can show and demonstrate experience and how you use data to inform your services and practice, and that because that is going to be a critical component of how we operate the mentoring program. And finally, we have a computer-based tracking system that we use here called CitySpan. So being able to be familiar with a computer, I know that sounds very sort of snide, but we've been shocked at people have to be able to understand how to use a computer. Everything we're doing data-wise is in a system, and it's a computer-based tracking system. There are tons of opportunities for technical assistance and support on how to do that. But just basic computer operations is really critical. So we just want to make sure, once again, that administratively you have that ability and someone who has the ability to be able to track data and be able to use the computer in order to put data into the system. Next criteria is organizational capacity. And so once again, as I've said, we're really stressing it's not only the ability to have a great, wonderful program, but from an organizational capacity side, how do you have or who is going to be responsible for taking program oversight, management, fiscal oversight, and or any fundraising activity. And so the fiscal capacity to operate this mentoring program is really critical. Once again, I just want to stress, as they indicated, you need to be able to have an internal budget of at least $250,000 in order for us to even be able to read your proposal. And part of that is, once again, is because of the fiscal oversight and the management associated with just managing a city contract as well. So for those of you who may have a really strong program and maybe not as strong on the organizational capacity, we strongly encourage people to collaborate, have partnerships in place, with your ability to do that. And then if someone's going to take on that role as a fiduciary agent, then they can apply and you can partner on this RFP as well. The other piece I will want to stress on this slide is, once again, your ability to recruit from a diverse pool of mentors, at least some of which come from the community. So once again, we really want to see that there's an emphasis not only in mentors, but in your organizational structure, whether it be board or staff, that is indicative and reflects some of the communities and the individuals that are going to be served by the mentoring program. And we want to make sure, and once again, thinking about cultural competency, thinking about a whole host of pro-social activities, and then being able to demonstrate that you can then outreach and recruit those young adults from those Chicago public schools that are levels 2, 3, or options, and that you have a memorandum of understanding as part of your proposal. Next slide. Lastly is reasonable cost, budget justification, and leverage of funds. So once again, as I've stated multiple times on the webinar already, making sure that you have an operational budget of $250,000 or more. The other piece that I just want to make stress is that your ability to demonstrate reasonable cost for a school year in mentoring a program or a full year. So once again, this goes back to the original, one of the first couple of slides about thinking about, are we doing a school year mentoring program? Are we doing a full year mentoring program? What are the costs associated with that? And what does that look like? Also be thinking about what is the leveraging other city and non-city funds to support the total program and administrative cost is something also to think about and be able to tell us in your proposal. The other things that we just want to highlight and make you aware of as part of the reasonable cost and the budget justification is the 15% in-kind match, and that is the last bullet. That part of that is being able to demonstrate that match and what that match would cover. The other thing I will point out is because this is a new mentoring program, we also will be giving you an opportunity to provide professional development and ongoing support for mentors. So once again, using the data to indicate where you need to put those dollars. And so we are giving you the ability to utilize 5% of your award amount for mentor training and professional development. So once again, we want to see that you're utilizing data, figuring out what you're learning, and then being able to provide that additional training to mentors, because ultimately we know we'll have better outcomes on the back end for young adults. And then lastly, we may consider other factors. We want to make sure that we're serving as many individual and young adults from the 36 communities. We also want to make sure that we have a wide variety of delegate agencies. And so you may be small and mighty, and we don't want to discourage you from applying. And so we may consider other factors when we look at things like geography, service array, language, ability to service specific subpopulations. So details matter in the RFP. And then if we have any questions, I just want to be clear, making sure that you have a contact person who can get back to us in a timely fashion. When we start to read these proposals, it will be late July into early August. So make sure that your contact person isn't the person that's going on vacation for a month. Because if we're not able to get questions clarified, we're going to have to move on or set that proposal aside and move on and not be able to score it and to be able to evaluate it appropriately. So we want to give everybody the opportunity. We want to be able to read as many RFPs as possible, but we also want to be realistic that you think about who is going to be that point person and that they are going to be available during that screening period if we have any additional questions. And lastly, and once again, all of this information will be posted. We've talked a lot about best practice. We've talked a lot about outcome measures. There's a lot of those things mentioned within the RFP. We just want to make sure that we're giving you as many options as possible and resources. So for those of you who are like, we think we have a program that fits, we're not sure. We think we're running a best practice program, we're not sure. We think our program reduces violence and increases in graduation. These are just some resources locally as well as nationally. One of the things I will point out is the National Mentor Resource Center out of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention does offer free TA where they will review your program and rank it up against what the national mentor standards are. So that is definitely, once again, we are starting early in this RFP process. It's, I think, 45 days. And so you have time, and I'm just queuing you up for Julia, who will say the same thing, is we want you to start early, and we want you to really think about to finish early, to start early and to finish early, but really give yourself some time to really put some thought into the programming piece, because once again, for those of you who've done mentoring with us, that is definitely something that is different, and we really are going to be looking at the curriculum base and the model very closely through the process. Next slide. And then, yeah. The only other thing I'll say, and then I will turn it over to Julia, is to our applications are due on July 18th, 2019. I had to put the year just to be clear for folks, and it's due at noon Central Standard Time. And we strongly encourage that you don't start uploading at 11:45. We strongly encourage you to give yourself some time to really be able to give yourself time in case you run into technical difficulties. And on that end, it's a nice segue to Julia, who will basically talk a little bit more about sort of technical assistance, the RFP, and iSupplier, and any how to really view the RFP itself.
Thank you so much. So, let me just switch around a little bit. Get closer to the phone to talk into the phone. We have, but now I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of briefly just go through how to find an RFP and start an application in e-procurement, as well as to accept a amendment, because those are important things that you should know how to do. All of this PowerPoint is uploaded on the DFSS website, and it's uploaded as a standard material for any RFP that we release. It's also, I think, included in the application, although that's a little weird, because if you could start the application, you might not need to read this. But we want to just make sure that it's out there, that you guys get the support and the training and the answers that you need in terms of how to manipulate and work through the e-procurement system. In terms of technical assistance, there's lots of places you can get technical assistance. You can get it on the alert section of our website. At the bottom of all of our RFP releases, there's usually a whole bunch of technical assistance documents that are including this PowerPoint, are posted. If you have questions, if you need to, just to start the process, to get into the iSupplier e-procurement atmosphere, you need to, your organization needs to register. If you are an organization that needs an iSupplier account, there is no way for, you've never made an application to the city before, but you have to register for that account, and more or less through the Department of Procurement Services. But you can also email this at this eprocurement@cityofchicago.org to ask them how to set up your application, or not your application, but how to set up your iSupplier, your organization's registry into the iSupplier account. That is a process that you make a request, they send you an email. It's going to take 2 to 5 days, so plan on that. If you've not ever made an application to the city, you might need that for your organization. Most people making this application do have an iSupplier account. You don't want to have 2 of these, so make sure that if you don't have one, like you can call the procurement technical assistance line, or you can call me and I can check to see if your organization is already in there, if there's any question, because you don't want to set up two iSupplier accounts for an agency. That just sort of gums everything up. But basically, which brings me to the next point, is that in terms of technical assistance, you can email me, you can call me, or you can email OBM or call them at 312-744-0358. All of us work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, so please, if you're going to call or email, we are not going to respond to you on Saturday or Sunday. We're not going to respond to you at 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes I check these things, but it's not dependable. I try to make a point of getting back to everybody within 24 hours if they have specific questions about enrollment or how to manipulate the e-procurement system. Program questions might take a little bit longer, and that because I refer them to Monica and Lisa. OBM has a higher call volume, but there's more of them, but they have a higher call volume. They might not get back to you for a day or 2. That being said, we make a note of who calls. Like, if I haven't answered the phone, it's because I'm talking to somebody else, or I'm perhaps giving somebody else assistance. So I've made a note that you have called, especially if you have left a message. And and the same with OBM. So there is no need to call me 20 times in 20 minutes. I saw the call when you called. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. I understand your anxiety, but calling multiple times isn't going to make me call back faster, unfortunately. In terms of online applications or online resources for you, you could always go to the training materials at thecityofchicago.org. At DPS, there's a screenshot where I can show you where I will show you to specifically link to get these training materials. They're actually quite helpful. There's PowerPoints, there are videos, there's voiceovers, there's things you can read, but they do provide good instruction. The section that would be most applicable for you guys would be the section, I think it's sort of in the lower part of the page, and it says delegate agency applicant. So you are a delegate agency, and so that particular set of instructions and PowerPoints and et cetera, and technical assistance materials are set up just for the delegate agency applicant. So this is to reiterate, when we're talking about making an application, what we really, really are looking for is start early. Please start early. The system is a good system. It doesn't crash. It doesn't get gummed up when 300 people try to make an application. But making an application in this system takes lots of screens. It's it is a system that kind of asks you if you're really sure. Are you sure again? And you will see an actual demonstration of that when I go through the amendment section. So really, don't leave this to the last minute. I monitor applications, as does OBM, as do program people, and we can see when people are like, they go in and I can see people not starting their applications until 36 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours out. And sometimes, these are not easy programs. They are often requiring new concepts, new writing. If you're relatively new to the e-procurement system, you're mastering a new system. I can only encourage you guys to give yourself enough time so that you're not rushed, that you give yourself that time to really have that learning curve on this system and writing a good application. So that would be starting early. Register into iSupplier as soon as you can if you need to do that, or call me if you're not sure. Remember that is going to be 2 to 5 days of you waiting for procurement to get back to you. As Lisa said, review the RFP narratives and the application questions closely. The narratives are different. They have some both major and minor changes, and it's important that you be aware of those so that you can make the best application possible. When we go to develop RFPs, we start with our scope documents. Out of the scope falls the selection criteria. Out of the selection criteria comes the application questions, and out of the application questions comes the evaluation tool. All of those things are kind of tied together. So if you are familiar with the narrative, and you hit an application question that you are not entirely sure about what we're looking for, review the selection criteria, review the scope, and chances are there's going to be very specific language that relates very directly to that application question, and that you will have a good idea of what we want, which then allows you to meld it with what your program is about, what your agency is about. But remember, those things take time. That's a lot of thinking, and building a program. It's better to do that without a deadline really breathing down in your neck as opposed to not. So that's that. Review the selection criteria, and then also please just use spell check. We have plenty of spelling errors, but spell check is always appreciated. In terms of working in e-procurement, if you are going to submit multiple applications for a single RFP, which in this case would be the mentoring RFP, you can do this, but you have to use a distinct email address for each application you make. And it has to be a live email address, because that is what the e-procurement system is going to use to communicate with you about that distinct email. So if you're going to do mentoring in community area 1, and then mentoring in community area 2, you need to have 2 live email addresses, one for each of those applications. And if you don't do this, if you use the same application, what you're going to end up doing is just writing and rewriting over the application. You will be able to submit, it will let you submit 2 applications, but it will have the same answers for both applications. Talking about writing answers, there's a 4,000 character limit per question, not total, per question. So when we talk about a 4,000 character limit, that's about, I guess, about a page, maybe a little bit more single space writing. It's going to be, when we say characters, we mean spaces, we mean punctuation, we mean actual characters, we mean numbers, we mean pretty much everything. The system is not going to count those characters for you, so it's really good to use a word processing program of your choice to do that count, so you are sure that you are getting, so that you are not getting cut off when you submit your application question answers. In this system, one nice feature is that you can submit an application early, and then if you want to go back and change it, you can amend it up until the due date at 12 noon, which is the time that it is due. So if you submit, you're like, oh, I'm ready, I submit. You press submit, you send, like you're in. You can, and then you decide later, oh, I really want to amend this question. I really need to upload another document. You can totally do that. And I actually suggest that you avoid the rush and possible mishaps by submitting early. If you submit early, we have an application on file. We can use that to review. And that goes to the next bullet point, which is that late applications will not be accepted, and in fact cannot be accepted without us re-releasing the RFP. So it's not, and I've worked with this system, as has OBM, as have my deputies and commissioner. This system does not crash. It often has issues with people, it has issues with computer systems. It might kick you out. I suggest that you refresh, you save often. If you leave it sitting there, it will time out after 10 or 20 minutes. And so it's really important to kind of keep saving and refreshing so that you understand when that might be happening. But that generally speaking, and we have this with every submission, that people were like, the system crashed. The system, I'm afraid, did not crash. Maybe there was a miscommunication on your end with your computer. Maybe your computer timed out and you didn't realize it. But this is why it's really important to submit things on the earlier side as opposed to the later side, so that you are assured that your application, which you work so very hard on, is accepted. I can't stress enough, if you have questions, you can make use of the e-procurement hotline for help. You can call me. Help is available. I will also say that there's probably not a ton I can do for you at 11:45 the day that this application is due, because that's just not enough time to problem solve. So let's start with how to find the RFP. To find the RFP, you're going to go to the City of Chicago website. I have the web address above. And so you're going to go to that City of Chicago website. You're going to click on that e-procurement bid and solicitation opportunities. Now, when you look at that upper orange bar, you'll also see that it says online training materials. Maybe you can point the arrow to that for a moment, Tom. Online training materials. So it's on that orange bar. So there we go. Thank you, Tom. So the online training materials, when we were talking about training materials that might help you, that is where you would click to go and find those. If you just want to go and find your RFP, though, you're going to click on the e-procurement bid and solicitation opportunities, which will take you to the next side of the screen. All right. So to find the RFP, it's not always on the first page. Sometimes you will have to go, because this is a listing of every procurement opportunity that the city has posted online. So you might have to click on that next 10, and find the RFP. When you do find the RFP, if you want to just take a look at it, you go under that details comment and you click on the eyeglass or infinity icon, and that will allow you to see the solicitation and the application questions without having to start an application. For when you do that, this is what you're going to get. If you want to hear, it's going to say the pre-solicitation time and date. We do webinars. It's going to have the webinar address. If you want to go and look at the PDF file of the application and the questions, but it's not going to have any of the attachments that we've included. You can hit that circled PDF file and where it says document. But if you want to see the attachments that we have included, and the attachments are generally budget sheets, budget instructions, and a copy of the RFP and any attachments referenced in the RFP, you're going to have to log in. And to do that, you're going to go to that login button at the bottom right hand of the screen, and that will bring you to this screen, or really this screen. So this is where the fun really starts. Oh, one thing I would have to say, I'm sorry, if you could go back those 2 slides. The one thing that you really want to note when you're looking at this slide is the solicitation number, which I believe is in the kind of the left-hand side. Yeah, there you go. So the solicitation number. Maybe you can point to that too, Tom. Left-hand side, it says delegate agency. Then it says program model, solicitation number. You want to make a note of that, because when we go to log in and look for your RFP, you're going to have, if we give the solicitation number, it's going to make it a little easier. So maybe you can just go forward those 2 slides, back into logging in. Now, to log in, you're going to use your username and you're going to use your password. If you're like me and you forget those things on a fairly routine basis, you're going to go to the login assistant. If you don't, you can just press login and you'll be in. If you're more like me and you're like, oh, what was that? You're going to go and click on login assistance, which will take you to this screen here. Yes. There we go. And that will have it will send your email address as to how to reset your password. It will also help you with if you forgot your username. And so those are fairly straightforward things. I use them frequently. They work. Now, in terms of finding your RFP in the e-procurement system, because you've logged in. So you've logged in, and this is the screen that you're going to get. And to find the RFP itself, you're going to be looking for the City of Chicago online bidding. If that does not show up, what you will need to do, it means that the administrator for your organization's iSupplier account needs to give you access to bidding and sourcing. There are 2 different functions that anybody can have from an agency standpoint in iSupplier. You can either do the invoice creation stuff, or you can be doing online bidding and sourcing. If you log in and you're not seeing that stuff, you have to go to the administrator, your administrator, and the administrator will be able to fairly quickly and easily set you up. If they do not know how to do that, they can call the e-procurement hotline, or they can call me, and I will walk them through it. I believe there's also training documents on that DPS page that we just talked about that shows you how to give people the online sourcing and bidding permissions. So to get to your RFP, you're going to open up that thing that says City of Chicago online bidding, which will give you sourcing, and then you're going to open up the sourcing aspect, and you're going to go to the sourcing homepage, which will bring you to this screen. Now, to find your RFP, you're going to go to Search Open Solicitations, which is on the upper left-hand side. You are going to change that pull-down box to number. You have a number of different options, but you'll change that pull-down box to number, and then you're going to type in the solicitation number that you found on the e-procurement website, and you're going to type go. If you don't remember the number, you can just type in a percentage on title, and that wildcard search will basically pull up all of the open RFPs, and then you can scroll down. But if you remember the number, hey, save yourself that time. And you hit the go button to get to your specific RFP or to the whole list, depending. When this is the screen, if you have a specific number, you are going to see, it will bring up that particular RFP. The thing to remember with this page is that pretty much And then, like many systems, anything in blue is going to, if you click on it, basically anything that's in blue font, it's going to bring you to a different screen or a different function. This will, note that you have the time left and the close date for this very generous RFP in terms of time. We use it as an example. We'll tell you the close date, and then if you click on that solicitation number, it will bring you to the actual application or the actual solicitation, which will allow you to both look at attachments, but also start an application. So we're starting an application. So this is what it looks like. This is not what it's going to look like for you because it will be a little bit more populated. But this is how, if you want to start an application or you're getting prepared to start an application, this is what it's going to look like. Your requirements are basically all of your application questions. If you want to add an attachment, which we require for many of our RFP for our applications, so that would be like a resume or a job description or really anything related to your, pardon?
MOUs.
MOUs, thank you. Anything related to things that need to be uploaded. Many times the administrator has uploaded the kind of background administrative stuff like the board list, your audit, all those kinds of things. Those usually have been already uploaded, but if they haven't, you can certainly upload them as attachments here. If you scroll down, it will, which I don't have a screenshot of that, it will show you the attachments that we have provided in reference to this RFP to help you. That would be the budget page, which would ultimately you would fill out and add as an attachment. Conflict of interest form, contact information from OBM, budget instructions, a PDF of the RFP itself, just the RFP. So that would be the things that you would need to do. Actually, can I go back a screen? So, and what you need to, could you move the down? Mm-hmm. So if you are ready to do that, what you're going to do here is you're going to say, you might start, I want to see people using that save draft button. So you can't really save your drafts enough. And you could also hit continue to continue on to the next section of the RFP. Should you be starting your application, which would be which in this system is called starting a quote. So most of the time, as a way to make sure that everybody gets the frequently asked questions and is aware of any amendments that we might be doing, we amend these RFPs, which will require anybody who's already started in the system, started an application, to accept the amendment. It's a fairly lengthy process of kind of, it almost feels psychological at this point. So it's about acknowledging and accepting this. So if you have an amendment, what you're going to, if this RFP has been amended, what you're going to see is you are going to be able to view the amendment history, and that will start the accepting and acknowledgement process, which is lengthy. If you want to start, you're just, if there is no amendment history, then to start a quote, you're going to go to actions and go to that pull down menu, and so create a quote and hit the go button, and then that will allow you to start populating all of the things that we saw in the last screen. But since we could almost guarantee at least one amendment, let's go start the amendment acknowledgement and acceptance process, in which case you would start by clicking the View Amendment History, which would take you to the following screen. So here we go, to acknowledge the amendment. So as it says, to be considered for an award, you must acknowledge each amendment and submit your responses. By doing this process, by acknowledging the amendment, what it will do is, if you've started anything, it will bring that whole application, that whole unsubmitted application forward into the next, into this amended version of the RFP. So if you wish to review the changes, you're going to click on the Affinity or eyeglass icon, and if you wish to, to review, well, you're going to, if you want to acknowledge and receipt acknowledge the receipt and understanding of the changes, then you're going to click on 3 down here, which is the acknowledging of the amendment, which will then take you to the next screen where you continue to acknowledge you accept the terms and conditions. You'll see the amendment description there's always like the amendment description. It's always a little thing saying what, a summary of what the addendum or the amendment is. And then you're going to click that tiny box saying that you accept the terms and conditions and acknowledge the changes made to the amendment. And then you're going to hit the larger box of acknowledgement, which will then take you to the next screen where you're going to confirm your acknowledgement by saying, hitting the yes, which will then take you to the following screen where you accept the terms and conditions of all the things that you have acknowledged and now affirmed. So you will again check the tiny box at the bottom of the screen saying that you have accepted the terms and conditions of the amendment, and then you will hit the box on the upper right hand side that says accept, and then you will be shown this, then you will have accepted the amendment. And your life will be perfect. So just so you know, I mean, it's a fairly lengthy process. The reason that we have this lengthy process about accepting and acknowledging and validating and certifying about the amendments is that we really want you to read what we have amended. It's often rather important. It will discuss everything, it will be minor changes like, oh, we said we want to correct this misspelling, to major changes like the RFP is now due on a different date, or this question has changed, or we found out that we needed to clarify this particular aspect of the scope. So it really is, you probably can just sort of click your way through these amendments, but I really suggest, since you're all starting so early, that you take the time to read the amendment and figure out what we have changed. And then, if you have further questions, call myself, call Monica, call Lisa, call OBM hotline. They probably won't know unless it's a technical aspect of the amendment. And we will do our very best to further clarify whatever questions you have. So if you have further questions, call or email me. I try to get back to everybody within 24 hours on technical stuff. Call or email the e-procurement hotline. They will get back to you within 48 hours, and start early and best of luck. I think now we're going to go to questions.
And I will say to Julia's point, before we jump into questions, we already know we'll probably need to do an addendum or amendments by Friday to clarify some things. So to Julia's point, we know that there will be one coming. So it will just, you did practice for those of you who've already started your application. You'll have to be accepting an amendment. So we are going to go through the questions one by one. For those, if we're not able to answer them, once again, when we do an addendum or amendment to this, we'll be able to clarify on that. But we will try to answer those that we can. So I just want to point out again that everything is going to be posted, and this webinar will also be available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. For those, if for some reason you're not able to hear the answer, or you want to go back, to Julia's point, starting early, you can go back, review this webinar, and it can maybe clarify some questions you have. So I'm going to read the question, and then we will answer for you. So we're going to start at the top, and once again, if you continue to have questions on, please make sure that you're entering those onto the dashboard. What is the length of time for the targeted contract payment per child? So we can clarify that our cost per person,
the cost per youth. Hi everybody, it's Monica Dunleavy. The cost per youth for this mentoring program is $2,300 per youth. And it is a one-year budget. You always do a one-year budget. Even the program is technically 1 year with the option of the 2 years. That's the hope. If money stays the same and everything's good, you'll be funded 2 years for this program, but you always give a 1 year budget.
And then I think it's next. I want to say you're saying targeted contract time. I just want to also just reiterate that the contract period is January 1st, 2020 through January 2022. So to Monica's point, the budget is yearly.
Yearly.
And so we just want to make sure that you're clear about that as you're putting the proposal together. Next question. Just to confirm, if we do not currently have a mentoring program, we would not be able to use this RFP to start one. Is that correct? No, that is not correct. Once again, we are looking at your ability to be able to indicate, your ability to implement, and be able to follow best practice, and then be able to utilize and implement a curriculum-based program. So it doesn't exclude you from the process, but we just want to once again go back to the selection criteria, and there are very key things about what we will be looking at that irregardless of that. For those of you who have had a mentoring program, we will be looking at past practice, but doesn't negate anybody new. We're encouraging new people to apply. So we definitely
new people. Let me just clarify: new programs that have established themselves. This is not startup money. You can't say, "Oh, I'm going to apply for this money and run a mentoring program," which you don't have the experience with. But if you have experience working with a mentoring program and with mentors, please go ahead and apply. Okay, next question. Is there guidance on what DFSS approved as assessment tools for this contract? So we are encouraging agencies to let us know what assessment tool they are using. We don't want to do a broadband of one assessment for everybody. But if it comes to that, we might, but we'll have training and everything on that before we implement the assessment. If you're doing one, great, let us know in your RFP. If not, we'll be creating it in our learning cohorts and implementing an assessment. Okay, kindly advise on what documentation DFSS respects to show you academically off track and discipline. So I think it's Jamie. So when youth are off track or considered at risk in the level 2-3 schools within the communities, those are your linkages. That's really your recruitment plan. So you want to make sure you have the connections with the school, connections with other service agencies, and really identify the youth that are at risk.
And to Monica's point, documentation isn't so much of having those relationships and conversations with individuals within the school who can tell you whether or not that individual is off track academically.
Well, DFSS, I'm sorry, on slide 10, can you provide more information regarding your statement, funded match used at mentor gender matters? Thank you. Yeah.
So we just want to make sure as best practice mentoring states that you should be thinking about this, how do you match mentors with mentees? So that is a best practice model. And so we just want to reiterate that you look at things like gender, where individuals with interest. If a young adult is interested in business and you have someone who's a mentor who's interested in business, that you're able to be able to do that. And so we want to make sure that you're just considering those things about what is the criteria we're looking at when we match mentors to mentees. Whatever that is, we just want to make sure that there's a logic behind it and it's in the best practice standard.
Next question.
Next question. Sorry, we're all struggling.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Will DFSS be providing the mentors with a list of schools in the community area which they're servicing for recruitment? So good question. The school list is on the CPS school website, so you could definitely pull down any of the schools that are level 2 and 3 and options within the neighborhood. It'll give you a list of schools.
Question. What happens if outcomes are not met? So that is really a question for those post-awardees. And so because I will focus in on the RFP piece. Once again, I'm just going to reiterate for people to go back to the selection criteria under the issues of program outcomes and capacity, and you have to be able to tell us how you're going to meet the outcomes. We're not functioning with the idea that outcomes are not going to be met. So I'm just going to reiterate, people go back and review that selection criteria, and that will help you ensure that you have the ability and a plan in order to ensure that the program outcomes are met. Next question. For the cohort of 12 to 15 mentioned on page 6 of the RFP, is the expectation that all 12 to 15 students are meeting together, or can we break them into smaller cohorts based on gender, age, grade, schedule?
So let me say, so the best practices is that you have 12 to 15 young people working in a cohort with a curriculum. And you should have, it's not that you only could apply for 12 to 15 youth. If you're doing 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and you might do 15 youth in each, you will be separating them hopefully by grade level, by development, by gender. It's what your program is, right? I strongly suggest not to go under 12. 12 is the cohort working the curriculum. If you only have 2, 3 kids in a group, really not a cohort. So we want youth, their peers, to be learning from each other and working on the curriculum together.
The other thing in regards to that is that I'm going to reiterate going back to best practice. So thinking about how you put your cohorts together, your cohorts can be blended, they can be single. It is based on best practice, and part of that is looking at the age and gender as well as the curriculum. So we're leaving that program structure up to you as long as it is following best practice guidelines. Is a level 1 school eligible for consideration, or must the school be a level 2, 3, or option school?
So, good question. So we are focused on pulling kids from the 36 communities, working with them. If you are in a level 1 school, that's fine. I mean, you're going to still find at-risk youth, still the requirements. Our priority is working with level 2, 3 schools and option, which are the alternative schools. So in your evaluation, it will come up where the agency is pulling youth from, and there is different point system. If you're in 2 and 3 schools, you're in option, or if you're in level 1. We need to support the level 2, 3 schools and the option schools. Our organization serves many of the 36 targeted communities. Must we only apply for one cohort in one community, or can we apply for cohorts in more than one community? You can apply. So we just want to be clear, once again, our issue is making sure that you are servicing young adults from the 36 communities. And so you can indicate what that is. If you want to, you can apply. If you need to put in 3 applications in order to do that, you can put in 3 applications. So I just, it is really your capacity and your ability for programming and where you have those relationships, and that if you're pulling young adults from the 36 communities. So for instance, if you're an agency, let's just say your administration offices are in Hermosa. Hermosa is not one of the targeted communities, but Belmont-Cragen is. And you really only service Belmont-Cragen kids, right? But there's a level 2, 3 school, and some kids might come from Austin, they might come from here. You say in the RFP you want to serve 50 youth. My target community is Belmont-Cragen. Even though you might be at a couple different schools within the Belmont-Cragen, that's fine. You can do one application then if you're only servicing the majority of your youth come from Belmont-Cragen. You just want to look at your data. Don't make it difficult. Look at your data. Where are your kids coming from? Are they coming from Woodlawn, Chatham, Grand Boulevard? Where's the majority of your youth coming from? That's who we want to serve of all the 36 communities.
Next question. Our curriculum is proprietary. Is there a system in place to protect the confidentiality of the curriculum we submit? So once again, I'm going to say I would go back to the selection criteria. We have to know that it meets best practice standards. So this is going to be reviewed as part of the evaluation process. We have to know what curriculum you're using. We don't share anybody's curriculum, but we have to know that it meets best practice standards. So, just, you know, we want to be clear about that. We're not sharing everyone's curriculum. We want to know that it's best practice.
So within this program, agencies can give stipends to the youth. That's how your program is designed. I strongly suggest, I don't like paying kids to participate in programs. However, it's your choice. You do it. You can do culminating events. You can do incentives for the youth. There's no real guidelines, but we will look. You have to have a well-rounded budget. Do not want to see all your money going to the kids for this program. You know, participation. I want to make sure agencies have an operating budget, their rent's paid, they've got materials and supplies for their kids, they have accountants that help with the budget, vouchering, expenditures. I'm looking for a well-rounded budget. So yeah, I mean, it's really what your agency decides on what's appropriate for stipends for the mentees.
So we paused for a minute because we were just reviewing all of the great questions you posted, and we just want to make sure we capture them all. And those that are similar, we're just trying to make sure that we group them appropriately as well. So thank you for your patience with that. Are there restrictions on time and place of mentoring? Can sessions be held at school, during school hours, after school, on Saturdays?
Let me take this one, Lisa. Thank you. So you have 5 hours a month to work in a cohort with 12 to 15 youth, right? I've been over this mentoring program for years, and I've seen the best of mentoring and I've seen the worst of mentoring hours. Mentoring can be performed within school hours, but I do not want kids taken out of classes. I do not want it on lunch hour. Best would be if you have the collaboration with the principal and the teachers, and there is a time slot within the day school. That is fine. However, you can do it at school, after school. It's really where and Saturdays and Sundays, I'm all for it. Evening, even better. Next question.
Where can I see the list of 36 communities? It's in the RFP. Is there a maximum amount that we can apply for?
No.
No. You mentioned the 12 to 15. Youth is minimum per cohort is acceptable to have a larger cohort. Absolutely, as long as it falls within best practice. So if you are running a group that's 30 and you have an ability for them to break out, but once again, best practice calls for, our curriculum calls for this kind of structure. That's part of your program design and structure. We're not going to question that. What we will question is, we have 100 kids and we're running a mentor program. That's probably going to raise we're going to have maybe a question about capacity and impact. And once again, we are looking at the outcomes for young adults in the program. Not how many you can serve, but the quality of that. And so that's just something we want to make sure is
Right.
on your.
Cohorts can be larger. We were just giving a frame 12 to 15 is a pretty big cohort if you're working with a curriculum. Absolutely. But it could be bigger, should not be more than, 20.
I think most best practice will call for anything 20 or lower.
Right. I mean, you could do 2 cohorts. Depends on your program strategy and your implementation. You can apply for 40 youth and break it up in 3 cohorts. That's 2 cohorts. That's fine. It's what your curriculum allows, right?
Can we utilize staff members as mentors?
Yes. That's the preferred way to go.
After the 5 hours per month one-on-one or in-group cohort model, are the 5 hours per month one-on-one or in-group cohort model?
No, there's no one-on-one here. That would just be gravy for the 5 hours. You're going to be entering data for 5 hours a month in cohort. If you do individual, that's just gravy and additional resources for the youth, which is great, right? So you can definitely do individual, but we are looking for the 5 hours cohort.
We really appreciate all of you still being on the webinar. There's like over 100 views, so we will try to get to as many questions as possible. So just hang in there with us. Are there restrictions on time, place of mentoring? Can sessions be held? I think we answered that one earlier. For the target student population criteria on page 7, what is the definition of academically off track? I think we answered that one, and once again, that's part of the school piece through Chicago Public Schools. We don't currently have a relationship with student schools. Can you see researchers find the data by their access to their? No, this is one where you'll have to go through the link to Chicago Public Schools to figure out what the levels 2, 3, and option schools are, and then you'll have to be able to work directly with those schools to determine where there's potential for partnership. Can you define what you consider to be a mentor under this funding? Once again, that relates back to best practice about what a mentor is, but some of the criteria we want you to think about what makes a good mentor is part of the selection criteria. So thinking about experience, culturally competent, understands the community, they can come from the community. There's standards around what makes a good mentor in the Illinois Mentor guidebook, as well as best practice on a national level about how to match mentors and what you should look for in a mentor. For the 1 to 3 disciplinary infractions, are these at a particular level? If a student has more than 3, are they eligible? Once again, this is about communication and conversations with school personnel. We aren't defining what those are. It can be 1 or 3, depending. That could be suspensions, expulsions, to having contact with police. So that is, once again, that becomes part of your recruitment strategy and conversations with the school personnel. How is heightened exposure to violence, trauma for community area being defined? It's actually being defined by I think we referenced the actual report from ULab in the RFP.
So I just want to clarify. So the 36 communities were identified as high homicide and high crime. Yeah. That's how they were identified.
Are we able to use men and women that have previously incarcerated as mentors? Some of these posts have great influence at risk, particularly with I think once again will go back to the selection criteria or the mentee responsibilities is they have to be able to meet those background check requirements. We are working with young adults in schools, and so we are following those guidelines related to that. Once again, if there's a question about a mentor, if you are awarded this grant and then you have questions about what that mentor looks like, we're happy to have that conversation. But we know those are the bare minimums that they're going to have to apply for in order to do that. When we are dealing with impoverished or violence-stricken communities, we have to understand that they're going to connect with communities. We have to use resources in that's the back end of that question. So, sorry. Is it required for an organization to provide services described in the RFP in an actual setting? I think, once again, I think Monica's answered that already. It is what you can design your program. However, we just don't want it to be, once again, just a lunch hour and just pulling people out. So we're giving you that flexibility. To clarify, to be eligible for this funding, does an organization have to have a current MOU in place for similar or same services?
I'm not sure about the similar same services. I don't understand that. But if you are at a level 2-3 school and you are applying to provide services there within this RFP, you have to upload the MOUs. That would be ideal because this program starts January 2020.
Hi, Heidi, this is Julia. I see that you're having a hard time finding the RFP. Why don't you call me later or email me, and I can help you out with that. It sometimes is a little tricky to get a hold of.
What is the frequency of the reimbursement? Good question. So once you're awarded a contract, and just so everyone is clear, this is a reimbursement program, and you will, once your contract is awarded, it generally takes about 2 months for your contract to go through, and then you can start vouchering. So I'm going to be real honest, you probably won't be able to voucher until March 2020.
Will there be a possibility of transitional funds for current MOI to continue through December? No. So we want to reiterate very clearly, MMI is coming to a close at the end of December 2019. This is a new mentoring program within the new prevention and intervention portfolio. Hence, make sure that you read the RFP very clearly. This is not an expansion of an old program. This is a new mentoring program.
Is there a website we can go in order to look at the list for option 2? Yeah, the CPS website.
Does the RFP need to cover all grades, 6 to 12, or can it? No, it does not.
Does 5 hours include the cohort group time and any other mentoring, or is it just the cohort? 5 hours a month is just the cohort with curriculum. The kids could be at your agency 20 hours a week, but 5 of those hours, your 12 to 15 youth are in a cohort working on a curriculum.
Can you explain the rationale from the 12 to 15 cohort size? That is based on national best practice standards. There's a link to best practices. You can get more information about that. Are we looking for evidence-based curriculum? Yes. Next question. One application needs to be submitted for each location, i.e. location means 2 applications. We want to stress that it's community areas. So if you're drawing from 2 community areas, then you need to have 2 applications.
So for instance, if you want to do Rogers Park and Woodlawn, 2 separate applications.
Yeah.
Is the cohort?
Is this one
for
cohort for the year? Can we add new youth throughout the year, or is there a cutoff period for the recruitment?
Oh, good question, Stephanie. So I know you have MMI. So you have to look at your kids, right? Do they fit the new criteria, at risk, off track? So you're going to look at your kids. If they fit, of course, you know you're going to recruit them to continue services. And it could be school year or look at the full year. Next question.
When it says outcomes will be self-reported, and self-report by the youth or self-report by the organization, it is where you will be using your assessment tool, and that will be reported by the young adult. We potentially may have an assessment tool for the organization, but ultimately we are trying to measure impact for the young adults, and so we want their perspective on how the mentoring program is impacting their ability. And once again, we'll look more closely once you're awarded your grant what that tool will look like.
Hi, Margaret. I know Margaret. The RFP says respondents must currently operate a mentoring program one or more of the targeted communities. If we have led mentoring programs not in those communities but are looking to expand, does it count as enough previous experience to apply? So this could be twofold. So Margaret, you are recruiting kids from this neighborhood. You might be from just say another neighborhood, but not necessarily have administrative services there in those 36, but you might be in a school in one of those 36 or run it out of, the park district or whatever. No, as long as your youth are coming from one of those areas or all of those areas and your operating program, go ahead and apply.
Do you have to include the 5% professional development, or is that optional? No, it is not optional. The professional development, 5% is required.
Correct.
Is the 4,000 character limit for each question identified in the solicitation starting from page 3.1.3 requirements? There is a 4,000 character limit for each question. I don't know if it's identified. It's just one of those things that's part of the system. The RFP says respondents must currently operate a mentoring program in one or more of the targeted community areas.
Oh, yeah.
We answered that, right?
Sorry,
That was Margaret. Nina?
What is this is Jocelyn's question. What is the guidelines for ratio of mentor to mentee, i.e. what is the cap? Once again, that is best practice. We strongly encourage you to read best practice structure, and that will help you think about your cohort size and matching.
And we did say 12 to 15 in a cohort, one mentor.
Yeah. And once again, you can do more than that as long as best practice supports that structure. Question, for the performance measures related to recidivism, this number or from self-report, once again, that can be from self-report. We will follow up with data from CPD and ULAB, but most likely when you are recruiting for young adults, it's going to be a self-report and or information you get from a school counselor, teacher, or someone else.
Hi, webinars. We paused again to kind of clarify and collapse some of the questions for you. So I'm going to Jocelyn Jones' question for, just to clarify, you mentioned cost per youth 23, correct? We do a cohort 15. Does that mean 34? Goes by just figure out how much. Yes, you do your budget how your program is set up, but it is, if you're running a 15 youth cohort, it's 2,300 a youth, and then you'll do a well-rounded budget. If we have other city programs, CHA Corp, can we recruit those students if they fit the requirements? You cannot double dip. So if you have a CHA, enrichment, whatever other programs, you should not be double dipping because you're already getting paid for CHA, you're getting paid for enrichment. We would like to see new kids. Kelly Walker. come multiple communities of 36, but are in one court. Is that one application? Oh, good question. So if 12 to 15 youth come in multiple communities of this 36, but are in one cohort, is that one application? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go down, yeah.
Sorry, we're just going to the questions really briefly to make sure we answer them. Some of them are similar. We just want to make sure we answer everybody's questions.
Clicking around, let's go down. Yeah.
So the question is, so if we don't have $250,000 operating budget, does that mean we cannot apply for the RFP? You are correct. We will not be able to screen that proposal.
Over down. Our agency operates a standalone location at least one of the 36 communities. Should the cohort be at the schools, or could it be held at physical? It could be held in a safe place for the youth, right? It doesn't need to be at the school. It doesn't need to be at your organization. It could be at the parks. Just say you run a great sports, basketball and you have the curriculum and you work with these 15 youth and you're at the park, that's fine. It's 5 hours a month.
And I think, Emily, your question is very similar to one earlier, which is whether or not if you have a cohort in Austin and a cohort in Humboldt Park youth, is that two separate applications? If you are running them in two separate locations, yes, it is. It is two separate applications.
You already answered. Let's see.
You did that?
We answered.
We
Yeah,
answered
keep going.
Anthony's question. Okay, I think most of the questions we're reviewing right now are all about the communities and sites, and so we're just scrolling through these because some of these we've answered already. So just bear with us. There's a lot of questions up here.
Do the MOUs with the school must be uploaded at the time of submittal? Yes.
So we're just, we're going to pause for a second. We're going to go through, we're coming to the end. We're just going to briefly look at all the questions and make sure that we get to those that are, we haven't previously answered and we haven't answered already on the webinar. So just give us 1 minute so we can organize ourselves, and we'll be back on to answer the last few questions. Okay, we're back, folks. We're going to read the questions and go to the last of it. So thank you once again. These questions are great. There are many of you. And I'm hopeful people are paying attention and asking good questions. So we're looking forward to reading these proposals. Can we include teens from the suburbs who need mentorship and/or simply take part? No, you cannot. This is a City of Chicago program with city dollars. Next question. I know that the RFP discusses employing a cohort approach. Does that mean you're looking for one mentor? Once again, that is best practice. It is, however your program is structured, you need to explain how it's structured. Our program is an 8-week trauma-informed curriculum within CPS, 6 to 12 grade. Classrooms focus on conflict resolution and healthy relationships. We serve that priority neighbors outlined in the RFP. Does this align with this funding opportunity? It does. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Next question.
How much control do agencies have over determining the assessment tool? Currently, we distribute the youth risk behavior survey every year. Oh, good. Also, where do ULAB's assessment is past MMI performance considered in the scoring grant? Good job, Shania. Okay, so I'll answer. So if you already do a tool, we'll definitely we're not going to just say everyone do a tool and leave everyone hanging. If you continue to do a tool, we might look at that tool and might want to expand or whatever, but we got to look at the best practices for that. So I would love to see your assessment tool and make sure you talk about that in your RFP. And then it's past MMI performance. Any past performance city program that agency has is considered, of course.
And then also says, when do the ULAB's assessments fall in regards? ULAB's I just want to clarify, ULAB's is not administering an assessment. We're using the data to inform us around things like school off track and contact with police.
And then they help us with the data strategies and pull information from our partners with us.
Will these questions be listed on the website?
Yes.
Next
one. Look at Dan's that one.
So if a mentee begins with our MMI program, was off track, but has since gotten back on track, are you no longer eligible to participate as a mentee in the new program? This is for, if they're on track, then you've met the outcome under MMI.
Once you did a great job, Dan.
You did a great job, Dan. This is a new mentoring program, and we want to see new K. And so if they're on track, then you've met the goal of your current mentoring program, and the current mentoring structure. This is a new mentoring program and a new mentoring.
It doesn't mean they can't participate in your program. However, they won't count for the data in your cohort.
So our facility is in East Garfield Park, but we service participants from a wide variety of target community areas. Should we list our community area as East Garfield Park? How do you avoid? If you decide the majority of individuals come from East Garfield Park, then you can list that as the community and you do one application.
Right.
That's fine. Is there going to be a survey? Can we do our own? Yeah, so I think we answered this earlier, Nina, in regards to if there is a DFS survey. That survey is that we are looking for you with best practice curriculum, generally comes an assessment tool. We're asking you to look at that. We internally will look at what that may be, but we are asking for you, we will work with you if you are awarded a grant, we will work with you on what that survey tool will look like.
We received an online invitation to apply for the grant. Do we have to request an iSupplier invitation again? No, if you have an iSupplier account, you do not need to request an iSupplier invitation or an account. You, in fact, shouldn't. You should just log in and apply.
Sorry, we're just reading through. We only have a few more questions left, and a lot of them are similar.
The bottom one, Nina.
The bottom, okay. Do the youth have to meet all the outcomes listed before they are considered on track?
No.
If you look at the chart under performance outcome, there are 4 outcomes we're looking at. On track is just one of them.
Let me see, Jason. Sorry, I missed this. Just to clarify, agencies should have experience providing mentoring service in any of the 36 areas, or agencies should already be providing services in the exact areas they plan to target. So what I'm reading is you should already have an established mentoring program working with youth in those 36 communities. We don't like, it's hard to find agencies who are startup programs because it's very difficult to start up a mentoring program. I hope I answered your question, Jason. If not, give me a call.
Is there a minimum number of cohorts we can have? Is it okay to submit a proposal for only? You can, ideally, we want to have folks, really look at 30 or more. If you're saying that you're only going to apply for 1 cohort for the second school year with 12 to 15 people, it means your recruitment and retention program has to be very strong to ensure all of those folks stay in. So you can apply for as many. If you have 60 young adults you want to serve, and like Monica said earlier, you can break that up into 3 cohort groups. It's totally up to you, and as long as it aligns with the curriculum-driven best practice piece. And I think everything else on here, as we look through, is things that we've already answered. So Jason, I think, had a question in regards to if you need to already have a mentoring program in the 36. We need to know that you have experience running and operating a mentoring program. It doesn't have to be previous experience in the 36 communities. We want to know that you have experience in operation. So we just want to clarify that point for folks. And the last question is, how will DFSS determine where resources will be allocated, i.e. will they be evenly allocated across communities or allocated based on the needs? It is based on the scoring of the proposal. And so our goal ideally is that we'd like to be able to fund every 36, but it is based on the strength of the proposal and where we are at. So there is no across the board piece. We are looking at that. And then as I indicated under the selection criteria, then at that point, if we want to then look at where we put other dollars in funding, we will look at that. So there is no set amount. Once again, you're submitting a budget to us. This is based on strength of your proposal. This is a competitive process. And so keep it in mind as you are putting your proposals together. We want to be respectful of your time, and so we are going to close at this point in time. I want to thank Monica. We really worked amazingly hard. As I've indicated earlier, I've literally only been at this job for 65 days, and so Monica really has basically been the person really steering the ship, and so I want to If you have any additional questions, by all means, we strongly encourage you to read the RFP first, listen to this webinar, and then if you still have questions, by all means, reach out to Monica on the program question side. And then if you have questions as you get into iSupplier and e-procurement, Julia's information is also listed here. Once again, start early, save often, email us if you have questions. We are very excited and looking forward to some really great, innovative proposals. Thank you and have a great
Thank you, everybody.